So it will be recorded. And if you're here to learn more about our checklist for remote teaching, you're in the right spot. I had some questions about whether or not this was just for synchronous online, just for faculty who teach either fully online or asynchronously, or fully online synchronously, or whatever. I think that there's a little bit of something for everyone in here. This is the checklist for remote teaching, but that assumes that some folks are going to be teaching with some synchronous aspects to their instruction, with some asynchronous aspects to their instruction. And so I think no matter what flavor of pedagogy you prefer, I think you'll find a little something here for you. As I talk, I'm going to show you a whole bunch of resources, which I hope you will return to after the presentation and explore in more depth. There is a lot in this checklist, a lot of content and a lot of curated resources, as well as presented content and information for you to dive into. And I think whether you are an instructor or an instructional designer or a director of online learning, you're going to find important, valuable information and resources in the checklist. This is a new version of the checklist that we've updated and moved. So you guys are getting to see it for the first time, and Rob's going to be popping the link to the checklist in the chat periodically so people can make sure to have access to it. So we have just recently reviewed and revised and refreshed the checklist, and so you guys are getting a first look at it. It really is, functions kind of like a checklist, so you can actually click these little boxes, and the clicks will hold from if you're on the same browser or same computer. They will hold if that kind of helps you to keep track of what you've gone through already. I think in a remote teaching situation that many of us are still in, we still are dealing with and also having to prepare for any eventuality, should the need arise to rapidly pivot to from face-to-face to online. And so I think this is a good resource to use to prep for that possibility, or if you're still in the situation where you are remote teaching or you've decided to teach in a blended way. I think this resource will be helpful to you. I always want to caution or acknowledge and recommend that folks who are looking to use any of these materials or to transition any of their instruction to any type of online, that you check with your campus first to make sure that you are following their recommendations and guidelines and processes and policies and procedures for moving your instruction online. So I want to just make sure to recognize that. So the checklist really is intended to help you think through what you might need to do if you are considering either rapidly moving online, or having a little bit of time to think about how you might move your instruction online in some way or another. So like I said, whether you're going to do some synchronous and some asynchronous, or some combination of face-to-face synchronous and asynchronous, I think this tool will help you think about what it is that you need to think about in order to do that in a thoughtful, systematic, consistent way. So one of the first things that we would want you to do, especially in an emergency, it would be to think about things from the perspective of your students. And having gone through the rapid pivot, back in March 2019, we all know that one day we were face to face, the next day we were online, and there were all kinds of challenges from everybody's perspective. We were all in the same boat. But what we learned from that is to really think about things from the student's perspective, and think about about Maslow's before Bloom's. Are your students okay? Are they safe? Do they have what they need? And then we can move on to thinking about the business of the course. So there are a lot of resources here and questions for you to think about as you are moving your content either to synchronous, asynchronous, or combinations, and to really help you to formalize a plan and to think about what it is, how it is that you are going to communicate, what your preferences are for communication, how you're making those expectations clear to the learners in your courses, and then a bunch of resources to help you think those things through. I've put together some things to show you. So there's this really cool basic needs syllabus statement, and the resource, I hope you will take. This is Sarah Goldrick Grab, who is quite well known right now in the field in terms of thinking about student needs. Students have to, not be hungry in order to be able to, learn. So she's done a lot of advocacy work and a lot of awareness building around the basic needs issue. And so this has come out of her shop, this white paper that I think is really particularly good. And so there are a couple of suggestions for how you can begin to reach out to students in that manner. And you can do this synchronously, asynchronously, via email. There's various ways that you can make sure that the students, that you have a good understanding of what the circumstances are for your students, and to begin to set a climate of trust and communication. So communication really is key. Here's an example of an adjusted syllabus. Now, all of these links are on that page, and Rob is popping the links to the main pages in the chat. So you can come back to this page and you'll see all the links that I'm showing. So you'll have access to everything. You don't have to worry about, keeping track of everything. You just need that first checklist link. Supporting online student success. I do a whole presentation just on this to talk about how, as an instructor, you can support your learners' online success and what the theory is behind that in terms of self-regulated learning strategies, and then also so that you are aware. I've also framed it from the online student, successful online student perspective, so you can know how you can actually encourage, or what are the things that successful online students need to do, the strategies they can do, and what you as the instructor can do to help them. And so I've kind of documented that all on this particular page. It's a really good resource to check out at some point. Humanizing online teaching and learning. This resource, this is a chapter in a book on humanizing online teaching and learning, and this chapter is on effectively communicating with your online students. This is a really excellent resource. The whole book is really excellent, and this chapter in particular is quite relevant to this particular element of the checklist. So I invite you to come and check this out. There are some, suggestions and recommendations about making your communications personal, and suggestions for different types of communications, mechanisms for doing that, tools. It's quite it's a chapter in a book, so there's quite a lot of information there. So I'm hoping that you will come back and take a look. There's even references at the end with links. So it's a very good full resource. So the next element on the checklist is to, after you think about communications and how you are going to manage those and approach those in your remote class, you want to think about your syllabus. So you need to review your syllabus. The other thing I want to mention about the checklist is that we've tied it to OSCQR. So you'll see on every page the relevant OSCQR standards that relate to that particular element of the checklist. So that's really important too. You can click on these links and get over to the OSCQR rubric, and it'll give you the standards that relate to this section of the checklist. So when you're thinking about, when you're reviewing your syllabus, you want to start with the end in mind. So the concept or the notion of backwards design comes into play here. And you want to think about your content and your course, the stuff of your course, kind of like in 3 buckets. How are you going to assess learning and provide feedback in your course? How are you going to facilitate interaction and collaboration between the learners in your course? And how are you going to present your course content? And so these questions should guide your review of your syllabus. And I have a whole bunch of sort of sub questions here that can help you start to think about what might need to be updated or revised or refreshed or tweaked in some way when you're transitioning from a fully face-to-face environment to some sort of a blend with synchronous, asynchronous, or a combination of all 3 modalities. So this will help you to start thinking about those questions and those issues. This resource is intended to really help you understand the nature of an online activity, what all is involved in conceptualizing or reconceptualizing your pedagogical objectives for an online teaching and learning environment, whether that's synchronous or asynchronous, and what learning activities you are going to design for your students to engage with. Again, the backwards design approach is highly relevant. You want to think about aligning your objectives with your activities and your assessments, and you want to think about, in everything that you do, promoting access, equity, inclusion, and justice. And so there are a number of activities, resources in this section that I want to highlight for you. The first is the Learning Objectives Builder, and this is out of ASU. And I think this is a really cool tool for both instructional designers and faculty who want to play around with improving the design of their course objectives, their learning objectives. And this is like an interactive tool. So I'm going to click begin on it. And you get to pick here where on Bloom's this whatever particular objective you're working on sits. So if I choose analyze, I then need to look for a verb, and this is going to give me some options for types of verbs. So I'm going to pick analyze again. And so by the end of the course or this session or this module or this lesson, you will be able to analyze. And then it's going to give me the opportunity. It gives you some guidelines, some explanatory information, and then you start typing your text there, and then you go through the process and you end up with your final objective, and then you can copy it and paste it into your syllabus or your online, wherever it is that you list your objectives in your online environment. Ice-breaking activities are a really good way to establish trust and create that sense of online class community and get the course off to a good start. So this is a collaborative document that was created by a whole bunch of people and continues to be added to. It started out as a question in Twitter, so many of these will come from Twitter, as you can see. And so I think there's about 51 here. So if you're looking for ways to break the ice, I would recommend mining this resource for some ideas and adapting it and modifying it, and then maybe adding it to this resource if you have some cool way that you break the ice in your online instruction. All right, so that's reviewing your syllabus and thinking about things that you will need to revise or refresh. Now you actually have to do that work of revising the syllabus. And so you need to think about articulating specific things in your online environment, so that if you're going to be housing anything online for interaction by the learners asynchronously, you want to think about what kind of stuff you're going to put in your course. And so clearly syllabus information should be there, and it should be findable. It's key that it not be buried in a folder under tons of links where it's not clear to the learners where that information is, because they need to know right up front how to contact you. We talked about that in the first element of the checklist. What are the course objectives? What are the types of activities they're going to be engaged in? What are your expectations and institutional or departmental policies? What policies might you have for your course? What's the schedule, and how do students get help? So when you get to the point of revising your syllabus, you want to think through some of these elements. In terms of the syllabus information, this page here will give you some examples of what a welcome document might look like, what course information might look like, what your overview and objectives might look like. Now, these are pieces of a syllabus, and you can keep them all in one doc and post them for download for your students, or you can, kind of present them in pages. In addition to having a downloadable syllabus, you could sort of break them up into documents so that students can find them more easily. However you do it, it's just important that it be findable and that there's information there for the students to really be able to have all of their questions anticipated in what you present there, so that they don't have, so that their learning doesn't stop, so that the door doesn't close for them, so that they don't have to wait 24 hours for you to respond, or for something that is getting in their way of continuing to interact or do what it is that you would like them to do in your course. So here's an example document of how you'll be evaluated. This is set up for a fully online course, but you could adapt this for a remote instruction environment, or a hybrid or high flex environment. You just want to think through, and present to the students how they're going to be evaluated. Here's another example. A lot of faculty often ask, when they're transitioning their instruction online, how do they calculate time on task? So I've put together a bunch of resources to help instructional designers and faculty think through some of these issues. This resource from RIT is really good in explaining how to convert seat time and homework to total learning. And then it goes further to talk about how you incorporate student activity online and how that translates. So I really recommend, and here's an example of that broken down. So this document is a really good explanatory document. This one here from, I think it originated at Rice, but this one is from WFU, is a workload calculator, straight up. So you go in and you adjust number of weeks, pages, what the purpose is, all of these metrics, all of these details about the course info, the writing assignments, discussion, and other assignments. And you will see, as you vary these things, here's the total amount of work that it's estimated, 32.11 hours. And if you muck around with the numbers, you can see that total is being reduced. I hope you can see that on my screen. In any case, this is a really excellent tool to play around with if you're really struggling and wanting to sort of get your head around workload and contact hours and workload estimator. What you don't want to have happen is that you end up with a bloated course that's a course and a half that kills you and your learners, right? So you want to make sure that only the stuff that is in the course that you've defined in your objectives, that you've created learning activities to, that you have a plan for feedback and assessment. Those are the things that are well constructed and documented and are reasonable to do in the amount of time that you have. That also helps when you're doing a short format, for example, course. You also want to make sure that you understand the commitment in shorter format courses is going to be, much higher in terms of time, right? All right, so let's move on to designing learning activities, the next element on the checklist. So you really want to make sure I showed this a little bit ago when we were talking about what a learning activity is, but this really goes into a lot of depth regarding backwards design and UDL, ensuring accessibility, and again about aligning your course objectives. So this resource, I want to point out to you the Topper resource out of the University of Central Florida. This is a wonderful resource that it has. It was grant funded. The creation of it was grant funded through the Next Generation Learning Challenges grants. And they put together this resource that is openly licensed, and anyone can submit their pedagogical practices to this resource. They have a call for this annually, and then they get vetted, and then if selected for a particular pedagogical practice, they become part of this repository. So I really encourage instructional designers as well as faculty who are looking for some specific ideas about how to present content, facilitate interaction, authentic online assessment, though all of those things, to come here and mine this resource for some ideas. This resource I also really like because this is from the University of Illinois Springfield. It is an index of types of activities, some of which you might find analogous to things you might do in the classroom, but they have all been reconceptualized for online. So if you're looking, how am I going to do this activity that I do in my classroom, typically face to face? How could I maybe reconceptualize that or adapt that for an online environment? This tool can help you with that. So for example, oral reports, it goes through and tells you the description of the lesson, some example objectives, some prerequisites, what your materials might be, some of the formats that you might employ, possible assignment activities, and then it hones in on asynchronous ways to do this. So in this particular case, it's looking at audio only or illustrated audio methods. And then it talks about synchronous methods. So if you're doing your class largely synchronously online, this has ideas for you as well. So I think this is a great resource. Here's how you might do a debate. So if you typically do debates in your face-to-face classroom, you want to continue to do an activity, you're going to have to adapt it in some way. And whether it's synchronously done or asynchronously done, you can do both or either. This will help you, give you some ideas of how you might do that. All right, so again, this is some further information about learning activities and specifically about active learning, how you might engage students actively in constructing understanding and knowledge around the concepts and objectives of your course. And so this little white paper here, I think, is particularly good. It has a little bit of theory. It has a little bit, and it's written in a way that is approachable. And some these techniques, I think, are some really great suggestions and ideas. I have a whole bunch of resources that gives ideas like this that I'm going to be showing you, as we continue to move through. But it's got a lot of information, including references and resources. Here's some more information about making learning active online. Again, a bunch of ideas on how you might actually engage students in actively engaging in your instruction, whether you're talking about synchronous engagement or asynchronous engagement. I think both apply. For this one, I wanted to make sure to have some resources for folks who typically teach larger format online courses with lots and lots of students, and some tips and suggestions and strategies for managing larger groups, either synchronously or asynchronously. So if that is you, I hope you'll come back to this resource and and kind of dive in and check it out and see what might be applicable or relevant for your course, your level, your discipline, that kind of thing, if it's a larger format course. I also wanted to make sure to pay attention to resources that were discipline specific, and I'll come back to this again, but we have a number of resources that are specific to disciplines, and these resources happen to be co-created resource. So if you teach in STEM and have resources that you really value and really think are good, I would invite you to come and share them in the STEM document. If you teach at social sciences or visual and performing arts or in the humanities, I welcome and invite the same. We're better together by sharing resources, and so this will share this not only with the SUNY Online folks, but beyond and across the system. So it's a really cool thing to contribute to. This is what the STEM one looks like. So some general science resources, virtual labs, and then I've got it broken out by discipline. So you can come and check this out. They're all built in the same format, so you can check it out. All right, let's move on to the next item in the checklist, which is accessibility, which is super important to be informed about, aware of, to check with your campus in terms of policies and resources available, both for you as the instructor of some sort of an online, remote, synchronous, asynchronous, blended type course. So there's quite a lot to know, but there are some easy tips to improve the accessibility of your online content. If you really embody the UDL principles, you will make your instruction accessible to all the learners. So that's a really good, easy approach if you're just starting out new and fresh. And then some kind of nitty-gritty things like about hashtags and color and contrast and alt tags for images and transcripts, and making sure your PDFs are accessible and that your tables are designed to be able to be read by readers and so forth. So I have some general tips here, some links to resources, some tools, and then we collect resources from around the internets that are posted here. This is a dynamic list here that every time we find something, we add it to the list and it'll automatically add here. So so if you're concerned about anything in your course regarding accessibility, I invite you, number one, to check with your campus and your instructional design support folks and your accessibility folks on your campus, and to check out these resources to help you get more informed and be more proactive in terms of accessibility. The UDL guidelines are here. OSCQR has a number of standards that are specifically about that. Consistent uncluttered layout is one of them in terms of color scheme and so forth. Making sure that your tables are designed so that they can be readable. That's another really important one. There's tons of details on this in OSCQR that will help you make sure that your content is as accessible as possible. So teaching remotely, here are some definitions. People are always asking for definitions: synchronous, asynchronous, combined online, hybrid and blended, and high flex. I've taken these definitions from the IPEDS online learning definitions document, official document that was published in May of 2020. So these are the official SUNY definitions. So I just wanted to present them here in case you have question or are trying to understand, what type of course are you doing? So let's look specifically at synchronous interaction. So a course that is going to be primarily synchronous, you may have, so that might mean by Zoom or Teams or Collaborate or WebEx. So there are best practices and tips and suggestions for how to do that well. And so that's what this resource is intended to provide you with, some tips for having good synchronous discussion, some tips and best practices in terms of just designing for a synchronous online environment, the best practices that we have curated and collected along the way, pedagogical considerations, how to set up to teach a live session, and so forth. So, and then I've broken it up by, Zoom, WebEx, Teams, Google Meet, and some Ultra stuff is in there. So I'm hoping that you will come back and take a look at that. This is a really good checklist if you're going to teach live in a synchronous environment for the first time. This is an excellent checklist to make sure that you've thought through all of the different things that you need to think about and consider and have set up before you actually run your synchronous online session. So I would really check this tool out. And again, always consider your campus resources, your instructional design support people, and your campus policies and everything around that is campus specific. You want to check out first before you do any of this. These are the resources I've pulled together for asynchronous instruction. There's lots to know about how to present content and different types of content. There's lots to know about all of the different aspects of things that go on in an asynchronous online environment, and so you want to think about, for example, adapting your PowerPoint presentations, not just putting them online and assuming that they will be effective in an online course when it was designed actually for you to stand next to it and talk over it. So you have to think about some things. So this is a really cool resource that helps you think through how to adapt your PowerPoints, rework them so that they'll work better for your online delivery. And then again, about active learning, you want to engage students in any type of environment that you are in, whether it's synchronous, blended, face-to-face, or asynchronous. And this one is specifically about engaging students asynchronously. So it's got a lot of cool, fun ideas about how to do that. So this resource is about the role of synchronous communication in asynchronous online courses. And there's a great streamed podcast session. All of the presentation materials are here. The tools and resources are here. Again, this is from our friends at University of Central Florida. So I encourage you to check that out. So blended and hybrid and HyFlix interaction, these are resources if you're teaching that type of a course. Again, the folks at UCF have a lot of information about teaching blended. We have information for those who are interested in HyFlex or are teaching HyFlex courses. Those are the different modalities. So there's tons of resources under each of those sections. No matter what type of course you're teaching, you want to develop a sense of class community and have engaging, authentic interaction happening. So you want to create, whatever environment you're teaching in, lots of opportunities for interaction. You want community building opportunities so that you can invite collaboration, trust building, and that social construction of understanding and knowledge. You want to foster a sense of trust so that the students can move beyond that into the actual engagement and learning. You have to set that up first. One of the first things we learned in the SUNY Learning Network was the highest predictor of learner satisfaction in online courses was the quantity and quality of interaction with the instructor. So you want to have a strong sense, you want to give the students a strong sense of how they can interact with you as the instructor and build that sense of authentic online learning community with them. So there's a ton of resources on this page for you to mine. We talked earlier about the ice-breaking activity activities. That's one way that right from the beginning, begin to establish a sense of community and trust. And of course, you want to build in online interaction and to think about how you do that in an authentic, engaging, and real way, given the options and limitations of the environment. So you want to think through how you're actually going to do that. And so here are a bunch of cool ideas and suggestions to enhance online interaction and engagement in your online interactions. Here's some tips for effective online discussions. And it's going to be different if you're doing the discussion asynchronously than if you're doing it synchronously. So we have resources for both. And we want to really think about, in any environment, what is the role of questions in teaching, thinking, and learning. And I love this resource because it really focuses on how to design questions for deep interaction, for deeper learning on the part of the students. And so I think that it's key. Thinking about how you design a question to foster deep engagement and deep interaction on the part of the students is very, very important. So I like this resource for that. Here's another resource for creating effective question prompts. You really want to think through how you are going to, what is your objective with the question? What is it that you hope is going to happen as a result of the question? And does your question actually support that? So if you ask what's the capital of Albany in a discussion forum, that is a discussion forum, but it's not a discussion question. There's only one answer. And if you've been teaching online, you already know this. If this is one of your first times, whether you're teaching synchronously or asynchronously, you're really going to want to develop your craft, your art of designing a good question for whatever it is that you're trying to get the students to engage around. Here's another resource, 50 Alternatives to Lecture, that is another list of ideas of how you can reconceptualize activities and adapt them for an online environment. Here are some resources for small group work online. Again, the resource for tips for teaching online, larger online courses. We have a lot of information on online teaching best practices for asynchronous online teaching and learning. We're building our understanding and repository for synchronous online teaching and learning, blended and HyFlex. But all of these best practices, when you really look under the covers, are about good teaching in general, and are adapted for whatever the options and limitations of the environment that you happen to find yourself in. And so I would suggest that any of these resources can be adapted for whatever mode or platform you happen to find yourself in, including face-to-face. So this is a list of suggestions and resources to consider as you begin your teaching online. So getting off to a good start is super important. Whether you're talking synchronously or asynchronously, you want to make sure that you're thinking through these things from depending on what environment you are in initially, or what stuff you're creating in each of the environments. You want to think some of these things through. We talked some already about active learning and learner engagement. This is true both for synchronous and asynchronous and blended instruction. So you want to make sure to keep your learners engaged. And the small tip I called out here, which is applicable no matter what environment you're in, is to address students by name. And it's such a simple thing, but if you don't do it, it's felt from the student's end. So when you start a discussion post, if you are directing it to a person, use their preferred name. And if you're in a synchronous environment and you're talking to people, you're going to have to use their names in order to make sure that they know who you're talking to. So it's a very simple but very, very effective way of helping students to know and understand that you know them, that you see them, and that you are engaging them individually, not as like a blob, a class blob. All right, let's talk about assessments. You want some really well articulated learning objectives. That's that initial page that I showed you with the objectives generator, as well as the time on task calculator that comes into play in this, because that is how you design the anatomy of anything that you're doing in an online environment, whether it's synchronous or synchronous. What is, how are you, what are the objectives? How are you going to design activities to meet those objectives, to have your students engage and meet those objectives? And how are you going to assess, how are you going to design activities where they collaborate and interact around those objectives? And then how are you going to assess and provide feedback? That's the simple formula for any of this, for any environment. And if you think that through objective by objective, you will prevent your course and a half, and you will have a solidly aligned course that has objectives, has activities, and has assessments all in alignment. So there's a ton of stuff to know here. We've talked about some of them already. Rubrics are an excellent way. We do a whole session on rubrics. And then of course you want to think about supporting student success and supporting authentic assessments. Let me go through some of these. We already talked about the learning activity one. Here's a resource on rubrics that I really like. It gives an overview of the creation of them and a ton of examples of different types of rubrics for different types of purposes. I really like this resource. We also have another one here from UW Stout that gives, here's their top 5 rubrics that you can look at, and any of these you can take and adapt for your own instruction. Here are some great tips from Rutgers on alternatives, advice, writing multiple choice exam questions, if that's what you use. This is a great resource too. And then again, another alternative to traditional testing from Berkeley that has a whole bunch of ideas about what you can do, similar to some of the other ones I've shown. All right, here is yet another one that I put together a long time ago that has some ideas of what you might be able to do. I have a playlist here of videos, and you'll see some people you might recognize in these videos and some resources about building online assessments, the importance of feedback, using technology to provide feedback, and so forth. So you can come and if you prefer to look at some videos to engage you in thinking about this, there's some videos here for that. Academic honesty, I think, is often a topic that folks are interested in understanding better, how to support learners to avoid plagiarism and to support academic integrity in the design of your materials, your activities, your assessments. And so here are some simple ways that you can think about in terms of designing assessments and providing learners with resources, and if it makes sense, if it's appropriate in your course, to focus on the process of writing as opposed to the product, and think about iteration in terms of being part of the assessment piece, and think about if it's appropriate for your instruction, mastery, and application types of modes of assessing learning. So finally, I think ending your course is important to think about how to do. And so we have a whole bunch of resources for folks on thinking about how you end your course, how you get feedback from your students, some questions that you can use to prompt that. This is not course evaluation. This is simply gathering information from your learners who just went through your course so that you can understand what their experience was like, and so that you can improve your own instruction as well as the design of your course. This is just an example of something I do in my online course. I collect feedback from students who took the course to give to the future students of the course. And I have this at the end of my course, and it's voluntary, but they can do video, audio, pictures, and text in this. OSCQR has a lot of information on how to review, refresh, and improve your course. So I recommend that you do the OSCQR self-assessment, and that'll help guide your course review and refresh process. If you want to get the OSCQR rubric for that self-assessment, you can download it for free from OLC. And all you have to do is put in your name and your state and that you're not a robot, and it'll download it immediately. And this is what it looks like. This is the new OSCQR 4.0 version that has been released in PDF format, and it will be downloadable is downloadable currently from the OLC. So this is what you'll get, and it has been updated. It's been updated for regular and substantive interaction, and I do a whole workshop on this one as well, which is the new Department of Education federal regulation on ensuring that online courses have regular and substantive interaction with the instructor as a way to distinguish correspondence courses from online courses. Anyway, that's the new version of OSCQR. I mentioned the discipline-specific resources. So we have some workplace groups. These would be for SUNY only, but the resources that are in the Google Doc, those are for anyone to use or contribute to. I showed again the visual and performing arts one. They all have a similar format. So if you have stuff that you'd like to share, I'd love to include it in this resource. And if you grab the link, you'll be able to do that. That was the STEM one. So this webinar is one of a series of SUNY online teaching webinars that we do every month, and you can sign up for future ones here. The next one is going to be November 16th, and that one will be on supporting online student success. And what's cool about this webpage is that all of the recordings are posted here. So you can go back through any of these and check out any of the ones that we've done this year so far. For a bonus, I wanted to give you the self-paced and self-serve resources page. If you haven't gotten it yet, we update this all the time. And so if you haven't looked at that recently, or if you've never seen it, I want you to know that you have all of these self-paced and self-serve resources that are available to anyone, regardless of whether they're SUNY or not. These are all free to use, adapt, openly licensed. You can come here and check it out. The resources for fully online asynchronous teaching and learning have also been updated and revised. And so I want to make sure you have access to that as well. And so these are all the resources that are just specifically for asynchronous online instruction, faculty and instructional designers. So that kind of wraps up the presentation. I have a bunch of things that you can do if you want to become a friend of SUNY. Anyone can be a friend of SUNY. There's the SUNY online website. Here's the SUNY online teaching website. This is our newsletter that we put out monthly. If you want a badge for attending this workshop, you can get a badge. You have to sign up for an account at Credly, and you can get a friend of SUNY badge as well as a participant badge. And in order to do that, you have to fill out this form. You fill out the form, and then I'll issue you a badge if you're into badges. And I think that's it. And I went way over time, but I'm here and ready to answer any questions that anyone might have. Rob, did anything come in the chat that I should know about, that I could respond to?
I don't think so. I've been paying pretty close attention. A few people wanted individual links, so I sent those.
Okay, cool. All right, so if you're here and you have a question, you can unmute yourself or you can type it in the chat, and I'm super happy to, respond to anything, find something for you that you wanted to see. If not, I'm thanking you for your participation and hope you'll come back to our next session, which is going to be, what was it, November 16th, Rob? And that's on supporting online learner success. Right?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I dropped a link in there. So sorry.
Oh, no worries, no worries, no worries.
Okay.
Darn, I went way over time. It was only supposed to be until 12:30, but I hope, I hope that was okay with everyone. And oh, Ryan just gave me a thumbs up. Thanks. Thanks, that's cool. So you're from Corning? Do I know you? Have we met? Hi, Ryan.
Yes, Alexandra, you're familiar to me. You're more of a rock star, but probably through COIL or OER. Definitely.
Yeah, you look familiar.
Going to be doing COIL again this semester, but yeah, it's nice to see you. I have to say that I was surprised that you went over time, because it felt like it was you were getting through a lot of content very quickly. So it was very efficient.
I have done it in half an hour before. I'm not, maybe I added some links. I don't know. I suffer from this too. I want to share everything with you. so
well,
yeah.
You shared a lot, and there's a lot to dig into. So I really appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. Well, it was super nice, to have you come and hang out and spend your lunchtime with me. And I hope to see any of you back again. And again, if you have any questions ever, don't hesitate to reach out to me or to Rob. It's probably true that if it exists, one of us can find it. And we have a ton of stuff. And so it might not be always clear where you saw something, but also if it exists, I think we could probably find it. We either have it or we can find something that will help. So don't hesitate. So yeah, thanks to everyone for coming. I'll hang out just in case anyone has a burning question. Rob, you can stop the recording if you want. And do you know what to do to make sure that